Welcome everybody to the Chyron booth, NAB 2023. We have our first stage presentation of this year's show, and I'm very proud to announce our Designer of the Year award. This is the first time we've ever presented this. We intend to make it an annual tradition because this is a very, very important aspect of what we do. We work very hard to be a strong, financially stable growth company. That's one pillar of what we do. We work very hard to research, design, and develop products that serve our customers. That's the second pillar of what we do. But the third pillar, and very indispensable, are the people out there in the real world who actually use Chyron products. We have an online academy that allows certification at no cost with very detailed and structured learning. And one of our black belts is Mr. Zack Millican. He is also a highly recognized professional in the field. So without further ado, Zack, I want to give you this Chyron Designer of the Year award.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to put it in a safe place
Okay.
for you, and I'm going to turn over the stage to you. Zack is going to share some of his expertise with us today. So take it away, Zack.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you, Chyron. I really appreciate it. It's good to see some familiar faces out here, especially Marty, the first person to ever train me. Catapulted my career. Thank you very much, Marty. So I'm going to go over two parts. First, the graphics package design tips, and then I'll create a social media full screen in Prime. So I'm really big on just communicate your content through design. You know, I was talking to Marty recently about this. It's so important of your content. Make sure the design, the animations, all that stuff doesn't get in the way. So I'm going to focus on just insert graphics packages, not really animation packages. That could be a whole other presentation. So examples like you see here, lower thirds, full screens, slabs, tombstones, depending on what network you're on. So I really like this quote. Design should never say, look at me. It should say, look at this. And that's just, it's all about the content. Content is so important over the design. So use your design to communicate, not complicate. So I try to always find a balance between a design appeal, so it, looks cool, it pops, with clarity of the content. Because the content is the most important thing. And I'm about to start talking about typography. Before we get started, I got a PSA about ways to get sued. Everyone knows music, everyone knows photography, but also fonts. So if you go to a website and you're buying fonts, just make sure you're also buying the broadcast license. I'm always looking out for my clients. So look out for yourself, look out for your clients, and make sure you pay that extra fee. There was a network that didn't properly license the fonts for a big marketing campaign. The designer happened to see the font on a billboard driving down the road and like, hey, I didn't get a big paycheck. What's this? So yeah, they had to settle out of court. Another time, a professional baseball team had a game presentation where the whole day was a theme. I'm not going to talk about the theme, but this whole theme was based off a certain thing that they were celebrating, and they found a font on dafont.com, downloaded it, used it for the whole design. What are the odds? The designer of that font was actually in the crowd watching the game. They had to sue. They had to settle out of court also. Just make sure, protect your clients. I like this quote. It's the difference between clarity and confusion. So you want to avoid using too many typefaces or fonts. I'm just going to say pretty much fonts. And you want to contrast font weights when you have a hierarchy set up. So just let me show you, for example. So if you see this, you have regular, medium, bold, heavy, and black. And I chose black here. This font is Texta. Texta black, and then regular. So a good rule of thumb is try to bump up at least two font weights to get a good contrast. Here I went a lot more, just to really show this black and regular contrast here. In general, try to just be left justified. If you don't know for sure, just go left justified, especially once you get past the lower third, over 3 to 4 lines. And the reason being, it's hard for the reader to reestablish the start of the next line if it's centered text. So try to stick with left justified once you get past the lower third. Just make sure the font and the text is legible. Is it going to be on a phone? Is it going to be on a screen across the crowd? Or is it just going to be on a large screen at home? And then when you pick your typeface, you want to match the tone and purpose. Typically, sports, corporate, all this stuff, we're all into sans serif fonts. Sometimes you may have a special font. Like, what if you were doing something with Star Trek? You're going to want a special font for that. And also, hierarchy is very important. So here on this slide, typography, I'm telling you, look at this first. It's the largest, it's bold, and then this is second largest. So the hierarchy is, I want you to look at typography, I want you to look at the quote, and then look at the bullets. Good design is as little design as possible. Some of the best designers in the world are the first to tell you, make sure, just keep it simple, keep it clean, legible, limit your colors. And really important in our world is contrasting backgrounds for text. Here we'll have a darker blue text. I have a darker blue with white text on top. It contrasts well, it's easy to read, it's legible. And it's nice to have white space. Let things breathe. Sometimes you'll work with an inexperienced producer. They just want to fill the screen with as much information as possible. The old less is more. So some practical tips is when you first start with the package, you want to define your neutral and your branded color. So speaking for a sports package, I'm going to define, is this going to be white plates with dark text or a dark color with bright text? And that's where you kind of start the whole thing. And if it's sports, then you have to make sure your team colors and elements will work and contrast well with these neutral colors. Now, I'm really big on spacing, consistent spacing between elements, almost at an obsessive level. So let me just show you. When I notice sometimes you're watching a network show, things aren't aligned or one thing looks a little closer than the next. I really, designers notice that, but your viewer may not notice exactly, but they may notice something is slightly off. So it's all about precision behind the scenes when you're designing graphics packages when it comes to spacing. This is how I test for contrasting colors. So I said earlier, you define your neutral color, and then you have to choose, like in this case, I have a team color that is blue and gray. So the way I test this is I hit F8, which is the info bar. I switch this to hue, saturation, brightness, and I'm going to hover, and what matters is the brightness. So right now it says 92%, and when I hover over to the blue area, it's a little transparent, but it's still blue, I can see a huge contrast jump in the percentage from 92% to upper 20%. And then it also, when I go to the team gray color, 67%. This is how I know it's a strong contrast. It's nice to have even more than 20, but at least 20, 30, 40 plus when you're designing. And if I had this blue next to a dark color, that just wouldn't work well. So you have to plan for that contrast throughout your whole design. Another thing is to avoid tangents. This is little things where you touch the edges. And that's why I like spacing. I want things touching the edges. It just doesn't look very good. And when your headshots, like in your mug shots for news, your headshots for sports, just plan for the cool big hair. Sometimes that catches us later on when it's too late. And once again, design for the both small and large screens and test your graphics. So when I'm at home, in my office, I have a screen on the other side of the room, and if I was using a Mac, I'll use Air Display. See how it looks on the screen there through the Apple TV. And if you're on a PC, there's a program called Air Parrot, and that will do the same thing for PCs. Now, when it comes to animation, for insert packages, Brad Bird here says, in animation, you're not creating motion, you're creating emotion. So it's all, the motion is to enhance the overall design. Use it sparingly, though. Now, an animation package, that's a whole other story. That's where we have fun with animation. You want to stick to real life physics, but at the same time, no rules. So if you have a football helmet fly in, you don't have football helmets flying around, but at least when it flies in, slows out. It's a good thing if you're in animation to look around for motion design principles. There's a technique called eye trace. So when you're animating, say for instance a full screen, things that move you're telling the viewer to look at. So with eye trace, you would animate a title, you want the viewer to look at the title. Then you start animating the stats, and that's what you want them to look at next. And then maybe you have a logo fly in. And also important, so we can get paid, you want to have a sponsor fly in. So the viewer will actually look at the sponsor. Sound design also brings it to a higher level. It's if things are repetitive, you want to keep it to a minimum. For instance, your replay in and out wipe, if that may be seen 50, 60 times, just be aware of that. And a big thing I'm when it comes to animation is just think about when things are moving around. Give it weight. Things in the real world. When text flies in, just think of it as like more real world. It has weight as it pushes in, as it slows down. But as a big brick coming in, it's not just like this little feather. So I always like to give weight to all my animations. When it comes to Prime, I'm really excited about the workflow, and I just want to make a full screen and social media full screen where I use some new techniques. Okay, from scratch. What I did is I designed this in Photoshop already, and I pre-planned how I want to animate this inside Prime. So this is a new empty scene, and the beautiful thing, just to get really started fast, is this feature called Photoshop Importer. I love this thing. This thing is perfect. Okay, so I have the social media full screen. I'm going to bring it in. Inside Photoshop, it brought in the groups, exactly how I named it, even turned layers off that I turned off inside Photoshop. So what I did is I designed Instagram and a Twitter full screen at the same time. So let's do some organization here. I love this. So I want to color Twitter, Instagram elements. So I'm going to start searching Instagram. I'm going to control click all of these because this is all throughout the project here in this scene tree. And I want to color code this purple. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to do this with Twitter. And then turn off. These are the elements that I turned off in Photoshop. And you can see because they're disabled here, there's no saturation. They're black and white. I love that. Okay, now things are organized by all the Instagram and the Twitter elements. The first thing I want to do is I could type this. This is already a template ready to go. I could just start typing and send this to air as soon as possible. But I want to do some little organization here. I want to set up an auto follow. I want to make this wider template. Do the same for the account. Now what I want to do is I want the account to follow the name. So this is simple. And another thing, they just upgraded autofollow for this new version 4.7. It is amazing. So I'm going to click autofollow. And there's a lot here now. There's a lot here, but it's easy to set up. I just clicked, I want to follow on the x-axis. I want to follow name, and now I'm setting my adding offset of 20. And you can see right away it started working. So if this was a shorter name, it would follow. Okay, now I have still backgrounds here, but I animated a background inside Cinema 4D, and I rendered this out. So I want to bring that clip in. This is the clip, and I want to hold the last frame once it starts. And okay, it's working. I want to turn off the other backgrounds. All right. This is the source of the mask, and as you saw, it's a luminance mask. A quick shortcut is I'm going to copy this mask effect, and I'm going to apply it to the body group here. I'm just going to click on this, and now this is the target of the mask, and all the other information is already there, but I want to reveal the body in this case. So later on, I'm going to do a transition, sort of an intelligent transition. If this was an Instagram carousel, multiple pictures, I'm gonna use a different type of masking, which is crop. So I pre-planned where this crop is going to go, and I'm going to go up here, select crop. Now the picture didn't change in size, but this is the default size of the crop when it comes in. And I have a little trick that I use to, I could manually size this to the size of the picture, but I like this other way better. So I need the Y information, the scale surface information. I'm going to copy this little keyframe here, go to crop, and paste. And now it perfectly takes the sizing of that picture. Saves a lot of time. All right, so now let's set this up if this was going to be used for like a news system, automation, didn't have an operator. Just real quick, I'm just going to set this aside quickly just so you see how easy it is. I'm going to drop the name in. This is called replaceables. I'm going to drop account name and the picture. Well, we're not going to use that in this case here, but that's just how you do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a control panel for an operator. So those same things, but a visual layout of changing this information. So I'm going to make it a little larger for the operator. I'm an operator. I appreciate that. And the picture. I'm going to bring this in. This is the visual representation when you change the picture file later. So we'll show this later, but while we're working, I'm going to name this scene. Social full screen. So I'm going to add an action where this is going to be the effect in animation when it animates to the screen. So what I want to do is I want the clip. I could do this in many places, but I want a visual representation of the clip, and I want to set a play command. And that is it. That's how, it's just that simple to get the clip going. And then I want to animate the header next. So when I select it, you see it's ready there for me, and I'm going to adjust. I could just a lot like After Effects, I could just click the keyframe and be ready to go. Let me zoom in while we're here. There's many ways I could drag this over. I could type this information. I could click the arrows, however you prefer to do it. So when it comes to the headers, I wrote down my information here. I want to go minus 600. And what I want to do here is I definitely want easings. The easing is great. So what I want to do is I just want a little bit of easing at the beginning, but let me turn both of these keyframes to easing. So at the beginning, I just want a little, and you can see as I'm moving this is a really cool feature. I kind of wish After Effects had this. This is super nice. I could go into a spline or a keyframe graph. I use a lot in After Effects. But I can just quickly visually establish my easing. And you could see the easing information is displayed there. So I know exactly the amount of easing that's happening here. So at the beginning, I also want to cut this on once the clip is there to reveal it. So I'm just going to add a keyframe here. I'm going to go back one. I don't want it to be floating out here. I'm going to make these hold keyframes. So it will there's no linear information between, and it starts animating up. All right. That's how I want it. All right, I'm going to stagger the body to come in, but I'm going to start, it's going to come from the top. I'm going to start it at 5. So when I go to the body, I'm going to select here. Also going to do the Y position information. Like I said, works a lot like After Effects. I love it. Also, I use the keyboard shortcut JK to go back and forth to keyframes. Same ability here. Love it. This is good real-world stuff. Easy to switch from After Effects to here. Okay, so the position Y on the body, I'm going to go from the top, so I'm going to change this to 700. So I can also type it up here. And I only want the easing at the end here. I want it to be also a strong ease. So I'm looking at my easing information. Yep, that's where I want it. So the effect in. So I really like how this is dynamic because just quickly I set up that mask. So I keep that spacing. I'm all about my spacing. Keep that perfect spacing as it's still animating up. The bottom is starting to come in and then it slowly comes to the end. You know, I feel like it has weight. It's slowly stopping. All right, so that's it. That's my effect in. So let's make an effect out. So when you take this off the air, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to start by creating an anticipation in the animation where this body here is going to slowly start pushing up, and eventually the rest of it will catch up. So when I animate this up, I want to animate off the screen. So I'm going to type 1080 here in this case. Now I want a really strong ease at the beginning. Love this. So I'm going to go up to 2.14. All right, now I'm going to, so this is starting the anticipation that the animation is about to leave the screen. So I'm going to really kick in gear. And I'm just, you know what? I'm just going to say, hey, the whole scene group, let's animate it off. But I'm going to do it quickly from 5 to 25 in this case. So here, also, same direction. And I want to do animation on both of these. I want a nice little stop at the top. So you can see the anticipation when this slowly starts to take off, and then boom, it's gone. Okay, now earlier I said I put a crop on the pictures because I was planning an intelligent transition for a new picture to come in if this was an Instagram carousel. So I'm going to use this crop here. So what I need to do is I need to make a transition completely outside of the scene that I could use throughout the whole package. I don't need the expressions in this case. We're going to keep it simple. Simple in and out is a cut here, so I'm going to turn off the cut, and I'm going to make the information myself. So I want to zoom in here. I want to make this last 25 frames. It's kind of been a theme here. And we're going to adjust the target here. So this target represents that picture. It could be used on text later. It could be used on little icons, logos. So this is a new picture coming in. All right, I want to set up my easing. I want this to be a strong, equal ease in and out. All right. Now a shortcut here is I could copy this track, go to the out, paste that track, and then I'm going to reverse it. But I still need to adjust where it's going to go. So it's going to start. So this is the out. So it's going to start here, but I want it to go the other direction, like an Instagram carousel. So instead of 1250, it's going to be minus 1250. So this way I'm keeping all my easing. Everything's equal. Everything's looking great. All right, so now I need to save this transition. I'm just going to call this push. I could call it push picture, but think about it could be used throughout the entire package for other things besides the picture that we're working with now. All right, so back to this here. Now I want the transition we just created to be associated if the picture changes. So I'm going to choose this group here, and I'm going to go back to the toolbox, and I'm going to choose transition, and I'm going to add that transition we just created. So it's going to be a file, the one I just made. There it is waiting for me, push. And I want it to happen on update. So when that picture updates. Now it's really nice here because here is a little place where I can test it before I go test it on my outputs. So I could say, okay, right now it's there. So I could say, what does it look like going out? Perfect. Show. What's it look like? Oh, let's go hide. Let's look what it looks like coming in. Okay. We're pretty close. We'll have to test on the outputs to see if we have to adjust it, but it looks pretty good. All right, one last thing before we go test the outputs is I need to assign what my effect in is, which I use the same naming convention, effect out. I just want to make sure it goes to program. So let's go to play out. Now I'm an operator. And there's my control panel I created where I could change the information here. As you saw, just want to make sure. Okay, just make sure the clip was there. All right, and let's test this. See on the output over here. All right, so you could see it animated on. And if I change the picture, I have another picture here. You can see, there it is. There's that transition I created. It is working. And there's the effect out. Oops. So that is how I make a social media full screen. I love the Photoshop import. Kudos to the development team on Photoshop. Yep, there he is. Thank you so much. So you have a designer, he makes something, you need to get it on the air soon. You don't need all the templates and everything. Maybe you just have to get it on as fast as possible. This is how quickly you could get it on. You know, you didn't have to animate it, but if you wanted to, you could still pretty quickly get something on the air fast. So, and one last thing, when I'm designing, it's all about music. I just have to have my music. So I'm always looking for new bands. Some of these barely have 300,000 listeners a month on Spotify. Where I will work on a package maybe a month or two if I'm working on a big one, and I'll just listen to the same music over and over to keep me in that flow. So if you have any bands, let me know. But I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.